This may come as a shock to you, but public safety is one of those fields where we constantly have to be training in one way, shape, or form. Now, training doesn't always have to be physical. Sometimes training is just getting up to date on the latest technology or the latest skills or whatever the case may be. We've heard of incidents such as the Charleston 9 situation. We've heard of drills like the Denver drill. We've heard of all of these different things. And chances are we've probably practiced them in our departments maybe several times. But training also is just as important if you're stepping out of your area. Sometimes we have a tendency when we just stay within our own zip code or within our own city or state to just be doing the same type of training that everybody else is doing. And we're not necessarily expanding that training. In this interview, we talk with Mike Goldstein, who's out of New Hampshire. And Mike has a very important concept. He truly believes that it is not only important, but it is vital that we step out of our zip code and attend different conferences across the country. Now, obviously, conferences can be expensive, classes can be expensive. So, if you're fortunate enough to be on a department that has a rather large budget, I highly suggest you reach out to your leaders and see if they can help pay for some of these trainings. But this is something we should be pushing in all cities and counties across the country. We should encourage people to go to different states, go to different cities, and try to learn new techniques. Something that may be common for a department in New Hampshire might not necessarily be common for a department in California, and vice versa. So it's very important that we continue to train. As I mentioned earlier, training doesn't always have to be hands on. Sometimes training is reading a new book that's out, or maybe it's listening to a podcast such as the Debrief. Training is important no matter which way you look at it. And it's not specifically for fire and EMS, it's for police as well. So, with this interview with Mike, we dive into training, the importance of training. We also talk about his podcast, The Can Report, and how it could be beneficial for you to listen to his show. I highly suggest that if you get anything out of the show that you share it with as many people as you possibly can, not for my own benefit or not for Mike's benefit, but to help save lives within our field. Mike Goldstein, how's it going, bud?
Good. How are you, my friend?
I'm swell. Cody, as always, welcome back. Cody doesn't have his typical headgear on. Apparently, he decided he's going to wear his local fire department
Oh,
hat.
there it is.
There we go.
Actually, this isn't even the local one. It's the one. It's one I got down in Indy. My head got cold.
Oh, was that when you were at the world famous EMS Expo?
It was, and I
One that you
enjoyed
had so much fun at.
I enjoyed the hospitality of the local union and gave them $5 because my head was cold.
And I'm sure they thank you for that.
Yeah,
I also gave them plenty of money
real far.
Well, I also gave him plenty of money for the beer too. So,
Well,
Nice.
nothing wrong with that. All right, so we'll do a quick introduction on you, Mike.
Sure.
Mike Goldstein is the host of the Can Report podcast, married to his wife, Krista, and they have two twin daughters. Mike has been in the public safety field for 20 years. He first started his career as a dispatcher and then later became a firefighter, which is what his profession has been for the past 12 years. Currently, Mike is a career firefighter for the town of Deary. Did I pronounce that right?
Mhm.
All right. Deary, New Hampshire. He's also a member of the part-time staff and state instructor for the New Hampshire Fire Academy. Mike is a perfect example of always being a student as he attends many conferences throughout the year as a student. He states, "You must always be a student of the craft. It's vital that we get outside of our own zip code to learn new skills to help teach our own and future fire."
There you
Yeah,
have it.
that's a great point. I think everybody gets I think for the most part, a lot of departments, at least around here, a lot of departments do really well in training. They train just about every shift. It's a lot better than it used to be when I was still on. We would train once a week, and that was questionable.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you have your mandatory trainings, like for me, right? Like my department, we do a lot of EMS. The bulk of the calls we have is on the ambulance. Unfortunately, I mean, it's the way of the world, and sometimes you can't have one without the other. Everybody wants to just be one role, which is a firefighter, but at the same time, EMS also matters. In our department, we do EMS, so it's vital that we are trained and trained and trained and trained. So unfortunately, there's times we don't get out in the field as much as we want. I really enjoy getting my hands on. I really enjoy getting just dirty and sweaty and getting my gear on and meeting new people. So I go to a lot of trainings to learn new skills, to learn outside of my own zip code. There's so much to learn outside of our own area. It's amazing what you pick up. And I learned that when I first went to my first real big training conference was Dadgum Fire Training Conference, and that was in Texas, and it was right outside of San Antonio. It was eye-opening. Like the things that I was taught, the people that I met, it was fantastic, and I took a lot of that back with me, and I was hooked. I had to go back for more. So I just started going to a lot more trainings and started reading up on more material. I started reading more books on different things. You can watch videos all day long, right? I mean, social media is saturated with how-to videos of how to be a firefighter, right? But you can watch them all day long, but some of those videos really aren't good, right? You have to vet them. You have to have some knowledge in who's presenting the material and
Right.
what they're giving to you, because they might have watched it off of YouTube as well. Then they're just vomiting them right back in your face, right? So you got to get out there. You have to go to these conferences to really pick up new skills and to get the why behind things. Because again, when you watch some of these videos, you're not getting a lot of the whys. And when you go to these trainings, you're getting the whys. You're getting like, this is why I do it. This is why I'm passionate about it. This is why I dedicated my life to learn about the can or extrication or search or RIT, right? There's usually instructors they're very honest. When you have a really good instructor, they're going to tell you straight up, like, I'm going to teach you about nozzle work, but I can't teach you how to attack a basement because I don't have a basement in my community that I serve. Like if they're down south, right, they might not have a lot of basements. So they're not going to tell me how to fight a basement fire. And those are the instructors you want that know they can't, there's areas they're not proficient in. And they're going to flat out tell you if you ask questions like Kyle Romagus, the dude is wicked smart and super humble, and he lays it down in the most basic ways. But he flat out will tell you, like, I'm not going to tell you how to fight a basement fire because I don't have basements in my community. I'll tell you how to fight a first floor fire, and I can tell you how to go upstairs and fight fires, but I'm not going to tell you how the fire works in the basement or how to go down and attack it that way because that's something I'm not proficient in. So I just became really hooked on it, and meeting the people that I've met, they start becoming some of your best friends. Like the people I've met in these conferences, I text and call to this very day. I met them over 2 years ago, and we still communicate like we're best buds.
Do you put on the Denver drill training about once every other week? Is that's the whole thing? Because let's be
No.
honest, how many times has anybody ran into a situation where they've had to use that training? Let's be honest.
So it's good. It's actually a good thing you bring up is that the Denver drill is important, right? We can't forget why we have it. And the book, The 30 Fires You Must Know. I don't know if you guys have ever read that book. Billy Goldfeder and Frank Lieb. They do a great presentation about the 30 fires you must know. It's important to remember why we're doing these trainings. Yes, they can be redundant. It all depends on who's teaching you it, right? If you just are having to check a box and there's no big why, there's no passion, there's no excitement about it. Yeah, it's going to be mundane. Like, okay, it's our yearly Denver drill, blah, 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 blah. And we do it the same way every time. Yeah, it's boring. It's not fun. And so, but then you forget the why of it and you just remember now it feels like work and not like important training. And the Denver drill is important, but we should also be upgrading it. So I think that's important. Is in my previous department, when we would train on like the Denver drill, we tried to do something different. And my training captain at the time squashed it. No, you can't do it that way. You have to do it this way. And we're like, why? Because no one else is going to figure it out. But like, here's a better way. One of our captains was showing a better way, and it was squashed. And you get that mentality of has to be done this way. It's the way we've always done it. We have to learn and continuously grow. And if you get bored with the Denver drill because of the way you've always done it, there's better ways to get somebody out of a building, right? That was their way. There's more efficient ways to do it. And the techniques are out there. But if your department's not actually learning that or sending some of their guys to these conferences to learn the new way or a better way, then yeah, you're just gonna be stuck in the same routine and you guys are gonna hate it.
Yeah, and to kind of hit on one of the things you said is you have a lot of departments out there. This is something that we have to do. This is the way we're going to do it. You can't modify that whatsoever. Now, obviously, there are certain things that needs to be the case. But when you pigeonholed guys into this is the way it needs to be done, we're going to train because this is the way it is. This is the way it has to be done. You kind of remove the ability for those guys to be flexible in the moment when the time comes to actually use it.
Yeah,
because
now they don't have a plan B, right?
Right. But
You
not
don't have
only
that backup
that,
plan.
but when you sit there and you tell whoever's leading the training, we'll say the captain or lieutenant of your department, when you sit there and tell them they can't modify the training and you tell them that multiple times, they're not going to want to put much effort into it anymore. They're not going to want to go out of their way. If you give them the rein to be able to teach things different ways and to teach your rookies how to think outside the box, because let's be honest, not every house is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch style house. You have to be able to use your brain on some of these situations. So you can't use the same type of training for every situation.
You can't. And you're absolutely right. And you need to also, again, you need to be able to have, we don't want robots in the field, right? We need thinking firemen. We need people to be fluid in their thoughts, fluid in the technique. And if something doesn't work, we need to figure out another way. And you can't have a powwow in the middle of an emergency. It has to be done quickly. And you have to rely on your training to remember that. So you always need a plan B or a plan C or a plan D. Things are going to change. Fire is never the same. The emergency is never the same. So you need to have these other ways of thinking. And if someone keeps telling you, no, it's going to be done this way, it's the way we've always done it, and you can't do another method, then when the shit hits the fan, you're stuck. And then you can't get out of it because you didn't train to do it another way. Like one of my big experiences was for the Philly drill or the Pittsburgh drill. I don't know if you guys have ever done that. It's pretty intensive. It's very difficult. And I always remember it because it was like a training scar for me because, again, my training captain, he didn't make it fun. He didn't make it interesting. And he really didn't explain the why. He didn't even explain why it's called that. He didn't explain why these props are set up this way. He made you feel like shit if you didn't complete it. If you ran out of air, then he would just make you feel like shit. He made you feel like you weren't good enough and that your physical attributes suck. So instead of showing us a better way to do this and help get that firefighter over these obstacles, because the whole point is you got to go through all these obstacles. You got to go over this like pallet prop, and then you got to go through a tube, and then you got to go through all these other props. You go through a wall breach. You got to find at the end. You got to find the firefighter. You got to package the firefighter, and you got to bring him out the way you came. That's really labor intensive, right? And that's all in one bottle. So you got to figure out techniques to do that. And if you're not shown that beforehand, how much are you really going to learn? You got to do the crawl, walk, run method. And when you're not shown that, it just becomes these training scars. And you remember it being just a shitty drill that you don't ever want to do again. But it could be something really important. So when I was in Revert Back to Dadgum Fire Conference, we did that drill. And someone was asking me about it. I said, I know exactly what this drill is. I know exactly what to do. Not because I enjoyed it, because how much I hated it. And I remembered it that way. So I told everybody, I was like, this drill sucks. I remember doing it in my previous department. And I just remember the steps we need to take to complete the drill. So it's all, I think, has to do a lot with the instructor, with training. You have to get down to their level. You have to be open to new ideas. And again, that's what these conferences, a lot of them that we have, there's so many now. We're actually really fortunate as firefighters and EMS, and that we have so many conferences to go to. It's a buyer's market out there. There's so many out there that you can just pick and choose. Before, back in the day, it was really just, you just knew that one technique because that was all that was out there. 15, 20 years ago, they didn't have a lot of these things, except if you went to FDIC. Other than that, there wasn't a huge amount of conferences. So,
Well, and
Well,
the
and
majority of the
FDIC is
training
so
that you
commercialized anymore.
100%. But the majority of the training that we used to do, that was all like hand-me-down style training. You're getting it from people before you, and like you said, they may have gotten it from somebody before them, and they have no idea why they're even doing it.
I
Yeah.
learned it from Captain Bob 20 years ago, so this is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
perfect example is SCBA conversion, right? Pack conversion. Do you know why we do it? Do you know where it came from? I only knew because Mickey Farrell from FDNY, lieutenant on FDNY, he talks about it. No one ever explained to me why we do it and where it came from. When I went through my fire level 1, this is the way you do it. But no one ever told me why. Like, how did it come about? No one had the answer because they didn't know. It was only till recently I found out from Mickey Farrell, and it was a line of duty death, Captain Fowler, FDNY. He was in a bad situation. It was a hoarder house. They couldn't get him out. His pack kept slipping off. So they converted his pack into a harness. And there you go. A CBA conversion, right? I didn't know this, but now you guys know this.
That.
Yeah,
Never knew that.
1999. So
Never knew that.
1999, FDNY, Captain Fowler, read it. It's important. Again, 30 fires you must know, right? Like, this is important information of the why we are doing things. And I'm not being fake. I'm not spitting off ideas. It was already somebody else, right? Like, somebody taught me this. It was on social media. I learned it from, because he knows, because he's on that department, because he's educated in that, because he knows that information. And his platform taught me something new. And it's not like he's talking out of his ass. He dedicates himself to teach others, to give that knowledge back. So now I took that knowledge and I'm giving back to other people. And I remember where that knowledge came from. Mickey Farrell taught that to me via social media, right? So it's important that we know that. But the pack conversion, does it always have to be that way? There's other ways out there now. There's like documented proof, like the SCBA is not made to be a harness, like a vertical lift of the SCBA harness. It's not meant to hold 300 pounds via the belt under your crotch. It can fail. There's other ways to do it, but some people don't want to do it that way because it's the way we've always done it. But the trainings I've gone to have shown me the new ways. And so I bring that back and go, hey, check this out. And I'm going to show you the failure points of the SCBA conversion. And here's the why I'm teaching you something different. But I only learned it from getting outside of my zip code.
Yeah, that's a valid point. And you brought up you said something that we've hit on quite a bit on here too, is talking about your why. And if you don't know the why of why you're doing something, then again, you can't get anybody on board. Just like if you don't know the why that you're doing something, why you're doing this job, then you're eventually going to get burned out. So it's a very valid point of, especially as somebody who is training other people or teaching other people or whatever, you really need to hit that why, hit it hard and hit it home.
Yeah, you need you need the buy-in, right? If you just tell
100%.
somebody you have to do it this way because I told you to, well, they're not really buying into it. They do it because you told them they have to do it, and more than likely, they're just going to half-ass it. So,
Yeah,
but if you give them,
and I think the other big thing too is that this field is not black and white. Like, you can't just say, well, let me go back to the textbook and figure out how to do it this way. Like, you can't. That's not how this works. We mentioned earlier about not every house is the same. Not every car is the same. Not every situation is the same. We have to keep improving.
so like I'm doing shameless plugs. I don't get money for any of this, just for anyone who's listening or watching. So like 30 fires, I talked about 30 fires you must know. This is the book of search. So this is chock full of the whys, right? And the newer ways to do things. It's not the IFSTA book. It's not the books that we get in our typical classrooms. We're going through level 1, but it should be, because these are the people that are the conferences that we go to, or some of them are actually writing the books in our learning material. The people are in this book and they're showing you new ways, but they're telling you the why. So the information that I'm giving back to my students, or when I'm giving a presentation, I'm learning from them, and they want you to bring it back to your communities, to your departments, and you're giving them the why. So it's like, they're not just saying, hey, you need to do this in this book. It's telling you, I'm telling you why it's doing it. You don't have to do it, but they're giving you specific reasons of why you need to take the window, like the whole window, take, the blinds and the curtains. And if you don't do it, you're going to get hung up on this. If you use it, if you try to take it with your tool this way, your tool is going to get stuck. Like, they're giving you really good information. So it's important for us as anything in our profession or our career, that we need to make sure that we're educated and constantly learning. So I get real passionate about teaching and learning, because it's just, we take it for granted sometimes. And I think people get so, not fear, but afraid of speaking up about those things. Especially, I think the people, when you ask those certain people why, they get mad because they don't know. Right. So if you have an instructor, or if you have a training captain, or whomever is in charge of those things, and you ask them the question of, why do we have to do it this way? And they get mad at you, it's because they don't know. And now you put them on the spot because they can't give the answer. They might have done it for 15 years and they don't know why they've been doing it for 15 years. And then here you come along and go, hey, well, why do we have to do it this way? Now they're gonna be like, who the fuck are you to ask me that question? We've been doing it this way for 15 years. You're brand new here. You don't have a voice, right? So
Well, it's ego.
it's
Ego
ego.
plays a huge role. And that's
Absolutely.
something else we need to work on getting out of, not just the fire service. It needs out of everything.
Mhm.
That's a hard fought battle right there.
Oh, it's a huge fought battle, dude. It's ego plays in everything, especially on our field though, because it is ego driven. Police, fire, EMS, it's ego based. Let's be honest. We're alpha personalities is why we do it. We got the, we fight what you fear, going hot, leaving wet t-shirts, like
I hate those. I hate
He
them
only
so
owns
much.
like 5 of them. Not sure
No,
why he
I
hates them.
don't. I hate those.
but that's like,
Oh,
it's on our t-shirts, right? It's on those, so many things that we want to have that bravado. We want to be badass. And when you start believing in that hype, you start to have an ego to it. And it's very hard to deal with that, especially so, like being humble and finding humility. Like, that's difficult. If you've never been humbled, dude, it hurts. Like, especially when you get older, if you've never done it, you're like in your 40s and 50s, and all of a sudden somebody humbles you, whether it's a call, whether it's somebody in specifics, or just whatever it is, and you get called onto the carpet, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I'm not who I thought I was. You got to go home and you really got to reflect and pray on that, and then have a big talk with yourself, and have a coming to Jesus talk, and like, you know what, I'm not as cool or as badass as I thought I was. Because one of the things I like to preach is that you have to have reflection. You need to constantly think about whatever call you're on, your actions, whether it was in the field or off the field, how you're treating people. It all comes together, right? If you truly care about your job and the people that you work with or that you are in charge of, you should always be reflecting of how you're treating others, how you performed in that call, how your crew performed in that call. Like, I'm always like, whenever, especially on a big call, I'm writing that shit down. My father-in-law actually told me that. He taught me that when I first started the fire service. He says, get a journal, write down all your fires, write down all the big events. Then you can go back 20 years and look at them. But also to go back a year from now and look at them and go, I remember that. I totally screwed that up. And then you could train yourself to be better on that. And maybe you could teach a probie. Like, hey, oh, yeah, I remember this. And he did the same thing. I'm going to show him exactly what I learned. So being humble, admitting your mistakes is huge as an instructor, as an officer, as a senior man. Like, you got to be having those deep talks with yourself, because if that's where that ego comes in. If you've never been humbled and you don't have humility, then your ego is just going to, one day your ego is going to come to a fault, to a head, and you're going to be standing there by yourself and not understanding why nobody wants to be around you.
Hear that, Cody? Got to fix your ego, bud.
Yeah, dude, check it.
yeah.
Check that shit at the door.
I'll get right on that.
We haven't really talked about ego a whole lot, and I feel like we need to talk about that more on this show, because ego, it's one of those things that you don't really realize the person who has the biggest ego doesn't even realize they have a big ego, right?
No.
Like it takes, like you said, a humbling situation for them to realize, shit, I need to knock down a few pegs. That 21-year-old rookie just showed me up and made me realize that I don't know everything. And it's one of those things that it takes a really shitty situation, unfortunately. Kind of like change in the fire service. It takes a shitty situation for it to come into play. But unfortunately, that's the way it works.
Yeah, like I said, it's a real trip, man. When I first started, within my 5 years, I thought I knew everything. After I hit my 5 year mark, man, I thought I knew it all. There was an article, and I need to find it. It was called Lieutenant Itis, or like Lieutenant Fever or something like that. The guy was talking about, with once you hit your 5 year mark, you start acting like you know it all, even though you're not an officer yet. And you start questioning everything that the officers are doing. You know, they're not working, they're not thinking fast enough, they're not working hard enough. Why haven't they done this? Why haven't they done that? And then when you finally become an officer in that position, all of a sudden, all the decisions are falling on you. And now everyone feels like you're not acting fast enough and you're not thinking fast enough. It's really difficult. In the first 5 years, all of a sudden, I've seen it before. And again, I was a victim of it. You think you know it all. And then somebody has to tell you to shut the fuck up. And that happened to me when I was questioning an officer and just thought he wasn't doing a good job. And finally somebody said to me, "Hey man, shut up. You don't know what they're doing right now. You don't know anything yet." And I had to go back and reflect on it. Like, you know what? They're right. I haven't seen it all. It's only been 5 years. There's so much to see.
Well, Jocko Willink writes several books, and he mentions that in a lot of his books too, that leadership goes both ways, right? You want to lead your people, but your people should be leading you too. And that's kind of where the system in a lot of cases fails itself, where you've got, say, a 5 year rookie. Well, that lieutenant, 5 year rookie, 5 year member of the service, that lieutenant should be holding them
There's
accountable.
some 5 year rookies out there too.
Yeah, not wrong. I could think of a few, but that lieutenant should be holding them accountable. Well, then the captain should be holding the lieutenant accountable. But it can also work its way up too. I think the problem is, and I've done a couple presentations at departments and other like classroom settings, and we talk about this. And I always ask, who here has the least amount of time in the field? And this was I think when I asked this question, it was in a paramedic class. And I had somebody raise their hand. They're like, I haven't even started in the field yet. I said, okay, so let's pretend you're on an ambulance and your partner smells like alcohol. You can just smell it on them. Their clothes are a mess. Like they're not cleaned up as well as they should be. Are you going to say something? And sometimes you get people like, oh yeah, of course. But no, really put yourself into that situation. Are you going to say anything? Probably not. Well, why not? Do you not feel like that's your place to say anything? No, because I'm the new person. Yeah, but it 100% is your place to say something, because your life is in jeopardy just as much as theirs is, just as much as the community is that you're out there to protect and to help. So I think that's the big problem, is we've got a lot of new people that come in, no fault of their own. They're nervous as shit. Rightfully so. I get it. But we have to do a better job at teaching the new people that you have a say, you have a voice, and you should be speaking up when things are wrong. Now, if you speak up and say, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, and somebody tells you now's not the time to have this conversation, you need to weigh that out. Is this a life or death situation, or should this wait until we do like a review after the incident type of situation?
That question you bring up is a textbook oral board question. Like, that's usually a question that gets asked in a lot of interviews. I've been in many interviews when I was looking for jobs, and that usually is the standard question. And of course, everybody's going to always say, well, yes, because of this and because of that. It's easy to say yes because you've never done it, right? So and they're going to tell you what the oral board wants to hear is, yes, I have ethics, I have morals. I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to tell on my coworker because he smells like alcohol, or because he's disheveled and he's not fit for duty. But is it really that easy to do when it comes to real life? And that's a tough question, right? I've never had to do it, and I feel
Right,
like
right.
I trust in my own ethics and morals. I think I'd be able to do it, but it's a tough world, especially if you do have an officer or somebody above you that says, nope, you're not going to say anything right now.
I mean, I think myself today, I definitely could. Myself at 18, 21 years old, absolutely not. There's
Yeah, and
no
there's
freaking
the
way.
difference. You get somebody that's new to it. Are they actually going to say anything, or do they want to not say anything so that way they don't potentially get in trouble for it for whatever reason, even if that's their
Well, and
mindset?
it's not just that. It's not just that they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want their coworkers to think poorly about them,
They
Yeah.
don't want to
which
think the
I
coworkers.
get.
They don't want their coworkers to think they're a rat, right? Like that's what it comes down to.
100%.
Right? Well, you can't trust Mike Goldstein because he's gonna tell on you because that's what Mike does, and he's gonna anything and everything. Mike just wants to get ahead in life, and he's gonna rat you out, right? But
Well, and
they don't
I
know
don't
the
know how it
story.
was for I don't know how it was for either of you when you first started, but I got my start in EMS before the fire service, and it was drilled into me when I started as a brand new, fresh to the field EMT. What happens in the truck stays in the truck.
Mm-hmm. So, like we were talking in the lobby before we started, and it's kind of like leading into that. It's been drilled on you. Whatever happens in the firehouse stays in the firehouse, and that was kind of drilled into me when I started. That no matter how shitty things are, you don't speak up. You accept it, and you take anything that's bad and you just shove it right down. And it's not the calls I'm talking about. It's the shit that goes on within the walls of the firehouse.
Yep.
And David Rhodes talks about this, and he there's some clips out there of him talking about workplace PTSD. Dina Ali talks about it as well.
Yes.
There's a bunch of articles out there, as well as Kathy McCart. Organizational Betrayal. There's an article with her and Tracy Edwards. I had them on my program. I had Dina on my program as well. We talked about that. It's a real thing. Organizational betrayal, workplace PTSD. When you have people that are telling you what you're feeling is you can't be upset about it, that you can't take offense, you can't be insulted. It's the firehouse, and that's the way it is. That's very old school thinking. Things have changed. People have changed. You can't call people names. You can't. I know, like some people disagree, and that's cool, but you can't call people faggots. You can't call people homo. You can't call people. You can't call them. You can't fat shame them. Like so, I had in my previous workplace, I've dealt with all of that. I had been fat shamed. I had been called derogatory things. I have been anti-Semitic remarks. And you just kind of you almost like do a check of like, did he really just say that? Because when I started the fire service, I started older. I was in my 30s. So I was really surprised when I had a senior officer saying these things to me. Like, I know this is wrong, but it seems to be acceptable by everybody. Like, nobody seems to have a problem with it. And they're all laughing because they're afraid to speak up because the way they've always done it. It was that culture. And so you just take it. And as it progresses, you start to second guess yourself. You start to lose value in yourself if that person is constantly on you, right? And it's not like, for me, it wasn't happening to, sometimes it happened to certain people. It wasn't everyone. He'd pick his favorites. And we had like at one point, myself and this gentleman I'm talking about, we had like a good working relationship. We were like buddies at one point. But the other days, he'd just be pissed off and he would take it out on you. And again, that ego, if you outperformed him, he would just say something wicked shitty just to drop you down because he didn't want to admit that you either outlifted him or you outworked him or whatever the situation is, right? And if you did like for me, at the time, he was a fire chief. We go mutual aid to a department and we came back. We had all these fun stories to talk about how we just kicked the shit out of this fire. We did all this work. He was mad. He was mad because he couldn't go. He was mad because he couldn't be involved in that story. He was just pissy. He had nothing good to say. And we worked our asses off. And that's that ego. That's that, no matter what you do, it's not going to be good enough. And I spent like 12 years like dealing with that shit off and on. I felt like I equate it as domestic abuse, where the husband knocks the wife around and she wants to leave. And then the husband says, "Oh, baby, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I still love you." Right. And so she's like, "I'm not going to leave him because he was having a bad day. He didn't mean it, and he's good for a week. And then all of a sudden something sets him off and he beats the crap out of her again. And then, this time her bags are kind of packed, but she doesn't get in the car because he stopped her and says, I love you. I didn't mean I was having a bad day. And she goes back in. It's literally what I was doing. Like every month was like, oh, he didn't mean it. He was having a bad day. And I would just take it over and over and over again. So
It's that narcissistic mentality. And
dude,
it is really, I don't want to say easy because it takes time. Like that individual, that leader has to do that for a period of time to keep you coming back. If they start off right off the bat, it's your day one and they start treating you like shit, chances are you're not going to put up with it for very long. But if it's been occurring over days, weeks, months, even years, you're going to keep going back because, like you said, well, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't happen all the time. It only happens when he's in a bad mood, which he's in a bad mood every day.
right.
It's one of those situations. And we have talked about leadership on this show before too. And I have a very good friend of mine who is a lieutenant on the fire department. He, quite frankly, should be the chief of the department, in my opinion. But he's a lieutenant, and he treats everybody the same. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie. It doesn't matter if, we'll say battalion chief, because I think he would treat the chief a little different. But it doesn't matter if you're an EMS or you're a cop. He doesn't care. He treats everybody with kindness, respect. He truly loves not only his job, but he loves people. And it got to the point where he was, I guess, in the eyes of leadership, too nice to the rookies and too nice to us as medics, that he got moved to a different engine house where he didn't get any rookies and where EMS wasn't posting at. So that was his punishment. He's now back training rookies again and everything like that. But it's just that narcissistic behavior, man. It comes out of nowhere sometimes.
But you can't, there's a fine line too, right? Like you can't be everybody's friend, because
Sure.
then when it comes down to be the officer and you have to like now be officer, you have to be a captain or a chief because somebody did something stupid and you got to come down on them for it. They're not going to be able to deal with it very well, because like they're like, hey, I thought we were buddies. Like we just went drinking last night and now you're coming down on me. Like, what the hell, man? So
Well, you have
there
to
is
set that standard. You have to set that standard, and this particular guy does. He does that very well. But you're right. You have to set that standard, and if you don't set it ahead of time, then yes, they start treating you like, well, I thought we were best friends, like you said.
yeah, like you
Yeah,
have,
there's a fine line there. It's a balancing act.
it certainly is. And you want your crew to work hard for you because they love you, not because they fear you. They,
Exactly.
right? Like
100%.
you don't want them to, they don't want to disappoint you. Like the former chief that was on my department, I loved that man. He loved us. We were his men. Like when he talked about us, I'll get my guys to do this. I'll get my guys to do that. We were his guys. Like we were his sons, right? That's how it felt. And I didn't want to disappoint him. And if I disappoint him, man, it was soul crushing. But with this newer chief is that it wasn't disappointing. I just knew if I screwed up, I was going to get yelled at. It wasn't fear of disappointing him. I was just in fear of being retaliated against, whether it was going to be ridiculed, made fun of, or some kind of other punishment that he deemed fitting for that time. I was, one of the reasons why I formed my platform was to be able to have a voice and talk about these things, because I was repressed for so long under that leadership. And it was very acceptable for him. Everyone, he's been on this department for like 30 something years. It was always acceptable for him to be an asshole because everyone just expected
Why?
it. Exactly.
Why
it was just a learned thing.
Who was? Because everybody's got somebody that's holding them accountable, right? Like even the fire chief has like the mayor
This
or county
guy,
commissioners
he
or
just
whatever.
he didn't like, it didn't matter. Like everyone knew there was files and complaints. It's small town politics for the most part. Everyone knew. But if you said something, if you said something to that chief and then he brought it to him when this guy was a training captain, it would go back. So perfect example. And I talk about it freely. Again, I love to talk about my experiences because I know it helps other people. Like, when we open up and talk about these things, there's somebody listening or watching that went, hey, that happened to me too. Okay, I'm not alone anymore. And that's why I openly talk about it. I'm not angry anymore. I was super angry back in the day. And I'm not angry anymore. I'm in a better light, and I want to spread positivity and awareness of these things. So for my experience of dealing with narcissism, and the way it's always been, is that particular officer, I had complained about him after a couple of instances of him just shitting all over me. And it was like bad. I'm like, again, I'm 30 something years old. I'm like, never been treated like this. I'm like, what the fuck? Why does he hate me so much? And from my history, I had a lot of childhood abuse and physical abuse and mental abuse. And now I'm kind of getting like these flashbacks of my childhood dealing with this guy. So I complained to my lieutenant, and this was when I was a call member at the time. So I complained to my call member lieutenant, and he said, nope, that's not right. We're going to take care of this. He then went up the chain, told the captain, and the captain told the deputy chief, and the deputy chief then told the chief. And then the chief had a discussion with this training captain. The training captain, like pretty much the next day, approached me in the bay, and he said, I need to talk to you for a second. What do you got? And he said, do you have a vagina? And I was like, what? He's like, do you have a vagina? And I said, last time I checked, I didn't. And he said, then why are you acting like a pussy? And I'm like, excuse me? He says, you're acting like a pussy. I heard you were complaining about me. I heard you got a problem with me. I said, well, I told the lieutenant, like, I have an issue. I don't know why you're treating me so rudely. And like, I think you hate me and I don't know why. And he says, well, that's a problem right there. You told your lieutenant. You didn't talk to me. You don't be a pussy. You talk to me directly. You don't be a man about it. And I said, but if I remember correctly, I have to go through the chain of command. So that's what I did. I went to my lieutenant because that's what I'm supposed to do when I have a problem. And he says, nope, that's wrong. I'm like, well, that's funny because everyone told me differently. But okay. He's like, yeah, next time you got a problem, you talk to me directly. There was never an apology from him. There was never like, hey, man, I'm sorry that you got the wrong message. I'm sorry that, our wires got crossed, or, I'll try to do better next time. Like, I didn't mean to upset you. Like, none of that, man. It was like straight up, you're a pussy. You're not a man. You're weak. And from that day, I was like, okay, now I know who I'm dealing with. And it was accepted. That's the thing. And it was always, so when people complain, he would retaliate against that and approach them and call them out for them complaining. So no one would complain anymore. It was just an accepted trait.
You think at some point you'd get the hint, like enough people are complaining about you that there's probably an issue. But again,
It's where the ego comes in, though.
Well, you're not wrong. But you mentioned the small town issues, and unfortunately, that's medium. What we call this a medium-sized city, Cody?
It's a big city for Indiana. If that tells you anything.
That's
half a million people,
but,
just over.
Something like that. But obviously they're having their own issues too. I'm not a member of that department, so I can speak very freely. But they've obviously been having a lot of issues under the same thing. And it's not a secret. Like, there's been news articles on it for the past 8 months. There's been several Facebook posts by the fire union saying that they've been having issues and calling on the mayor to do something about it. And the mayor's like, wow, there's nothing wrong. I'm behind him 100%. Clearly there's something wrong when you pull a vote and nearly 90% of the members of that department say they want this chief to stand down.
I think it was more than that.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I think it was 95%. It was like 95%. They wanted
either way, an overwhelming majority said they have no confidence in their chief.
And the mayor's response: I support this chief 110%.
The more things are said about it, the more everybody just doubles down on.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this mayor did not get voted in. This mayor was appointed because the original mayor had died in office. So that party was allowed to appoint somebody to fill in that space to continue on the term until the next election. So
Gotcha.
There's that too.
It's a crazy world, man. But for my area was they're all volunteers or call members at the time, and they wanted to do the job. So they wouldn't speak up. And if one person spoke up and he'd be gone, that guy would push him out. So it's just a learned trait, and it happens more often than you know, and especially the more small town departments because they just want to help the community. They just want to be firefighters. They can't do it anywhere else, right? They have full time jobs they've established. They're either career firefighters somewhere else, or they're businessmen, or they have their own businesses, or just whatever. They might make a shit ton more money, so they're not going to leave town to try to be a firefighter anywhere else. And so this is what they enjoy. This is what they know. And when they complain, it goes right back to that person, and he just will retaliate and and confront them and make them feel like shit. So, and then when you have that kind of mentality, like we're talking about before, then that comes in the performance anxiety because now you can't do anything right because that person thinks he knows it all, he's seen it all, he's done it all. And when you're trying to learn, that's again when that evil comes out and he just yells and screams, and you start anytime you're gonna want to throw a ladder, like you're gonna get scared to throw that ladder because he's gonna yell at you and scream at you. You're gonna do it wrong, and something so simple, something so mundane, but yet you get that anxiety of how is he going to make me feel like shit in front of everybody. And again, it happens to a lot of people. And I think also with suicides, I feel that, and I don't know the numbers because a lot of numbers aren't out there, but I honestly feel that it has a lot to do with some of the suicides that we have in the fire service, is because I feel that they don't know what to do and where to go, because it's different than talking about the calls. You're talking about the culture inside the firehouse, and you don't talk about the culture inside the firehouse, right? And when you can't talk to your brothers or sisters because you're going to feel alienated or excluded, you can't really talk about it at home because you don't want to bother your family about it. They don't want to hear it anymore. There's nowhere to turn to because you feel like you're a complainer. So I do feel there's a correlation with it. I know when I was struggling, I would complain to my wife all the time, and I knew she was just sick of it.
Well, and so I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think first of all, you're 100% right. It's if it's not just the calls that are causing issues, the last thing you should have to deal with is the drama inside the firehouse or inside your agency or whatever, if we're talking about police or anything like that. But I think so Travis Howes hits this pretty hard. I've seen two of his presentations and he hits this pretty hard. I think one thing that we all struggle with, I seriously struggled with it for a period of time, but we struggle with having any conversation with our loved ones about it because for multiple different reasons, if I could talk. The first reason is we don't want to bother them, or
Mhm.
maybe they don't understand. And the reason why they don't understand is because we don't give them an opportunity to understand. We don't explain the situation. There's a department here in town that does a great job at this. There might be more than one, but this department every Sunday evening, they have family dinner. So the crew that's working, they invite their loved ones, kids included. They come out to the engine house and they have dinner with them. And I think that's great because one, it introduces the entire family to the department. It gets them a better understanding of what it is that their mom or dad is doing on a day to day basis. But that's a start, right? So we still need to have that conversation with our wives or our husbands or whatever the situation may be and
Yeah.
let them know what's going on. The problem is, like you said, we get to the point where we're having these conversations on a frequent basis and we feel like, well, now we're just making shit worse for them. And you and I kind of talked a little bit about this at the beginning. I used to only talk about mental health on this show until it got to the point where it was affecting my mental health again. So I had
Yeah.
to I had to tone it down.
Because you're
It's the
rehashing
same
the
thing
same
with our
shit over and
family.
over again, right? You're just
Right.
you're bogging your mind down with shit that you were trying to forget.
Yep.
So yeah, and I just think there is definitely, I think, a strong correlation with that. And what's also, again, when you have toxic leadership, you're going to have crews that aren't going to perform right. You're just going to have crews that just going to second guess everything because you micromanage the shit out of them, and they're anxious about anything that they do in front of you, and it's just they're gonna have that chief is gonna have a problem with everything, right? And I was on a call years ago where we're mopping up from a fire, doing some overhaul, and one of the chiefs asked one of the members to cut a hole in the building. Excuse me. And the gentleman answers back with, "What kind of hole do you want?" And that chief said, "I don't care. It could be a circle, a triangle. I don't give a shit. Just cut me a hole." But that came from micromanaging, right? Because he wasn't told specifically how and what type of diameter or size is to be cut. Like, you're gonna cut a square. Like, let's be real, right? So it's just a funny that he asked that question, "What kind of hole do you want?" But that came from because that other chief would always dictate every little thing you would do. Well, now you have robots and they don't know what to do unless you specifically tell them what to do. And they're also afraid to make a mistake and they don't cut it right. Now he's going to scream at them for it.
Yep. I think we've all been in a situation like that. Maybe not to that extent, but I think we've all been in a situation like that before.
Well, from my perspective, I don't want robots.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Me personally. Like I don't like the whole micromanaging stuff. I don't want people that are used to being micromanaged, because if I direct somebody to do something, I kind of expect them to know what they're doing. Goes back to knowing the why, so that way they can they can make their own decisions to a certain point. Because again, you tell somebody go cut a hole, just cut a hole, man.
Yeah. Well, because that comes down to expectations. And I talk about that in my presentation is a good leader is going to set expectations, right? They're going to have standards and you're going to train with them. So that way there is no second guessing of what kind of hole do you want, or I don't know what you're thinking today. Like, that comes with the fluidity of setting goals, expectations, and working together and having a good culture where you can talk about those things. When you're training, you can ask those good questions, because then bam, in the field, like, you're already going to know, you're going to already be one step ahead because you've asked all the questions you possibly could think of, and you're already going to know what they're going to want before they even say it. And it's not being a robot, it's being fluid, it's being free thinking, and knowing exactly what your officer wants because he set the expectations way beforehand, right? It's like, you get a new crew, you should be telling them, here's what I want from you. These are the things I expect from you. This is how I'm going to operate in the truck, in the field, how I want you to dress, the tools I want you to grab. And honestly, it's the same thing for open communications. That officer should also be asking the crew, what do you expect from me? What do you expect from your officer, right? That's that open communication of giving them buy-in. Like, wow, he actually wants to hear from me. Great. So here's me as a tailboarder. I expect my officer to be geared up just as fast as I am, or even faster. I expect my officer to work just as hard as me. I expect my officer to treat me fairly. I expect my officer, like, when I ask a question, all those things, like, whether it's new or a seasoned guy, when you get a new officer, have a list ready to rock. So you can say my expectation list, and you have, like, literally have a sit down over dinner, over breakfast, whatever it may be. So everybody's on the same page and there's no confusion in it. That's open communication. That's loving your crew and caring for your crew. There's buy-in on both parties.
I
Well,
would
as
take
an
it a step
officer,
further. I would take a step further and say it's not just the officers. It's more senior black hat members as well. If a senior member of the department, even if they're still a black hat, they should be doing the exact same thing. They should be asking those questions to the newer members, and they should be setting expectations as well. Sorry,
Absolutely.
Cody.
no, you're fine. Um, from an officer perspective, to have that conversation with your guys, there's no room for ego, and you have to check it at the door, be humble, humility. That's what you were talking about earlier.
Yep. Yeah. I had a great conversation, again, on my podcast. I talked to a lot of amazing people. One of them was I did a live show with Nate Sturm, um, Ian Schulte, and Dan Now. I picked the three of them because because of the love they have for their crew, the love that they have for the job. And Nate Sturm, he's a district chief in Apopka, Florida. You can look him up. He has a page called Buddy Breathers. That man loves his men. That man loves being a firefighter. He cares deeply for his crew. He knows what it's like to hit rock bottom. He's very open about it, and he wants to share his story because he wants to let his crews know and people know, like, it's okay to be transparent. It's okay to love your crew. It's okay to show them appreciation. And you see in the posts that he makes, like, they're always working out together. They invite him to go to their different stations to do morning workouts or to do breakfast. And, and that's how you grow your culture, and your team is loving one another and having love for your crew and caring for them and asking them things. Honestly, it's a failure if there's a chief, if there's chiefs. I'm going to go, obviously, if you have 180 personnel, 200 personnel fire department, that chief's not going to know every friggin' person. So I'm not going with that. But if your officer, immediate officer, doesn't know that you have kids or doesn't ask you like how your family is, and it doesn't ask them those important questions in the morning, you got something wrong, right? No, but then you're not talking enough. You're not opening up enough. Like if you were an officer, or like you said, a senior guy, a black hat, right? And you walk in the door and you're pissed off, and somebody asks you how your morning is, and you just grumble and walk away, you're setting the tone. And if you continuously do that, then no one's ever going to want to be around you. You're setting the tone all the time. Just, hey, don't go near that guy. That guy is angry. We're going to just go over here. You got to open up, like ask important questions. How was your days off? How's your kids? How's your wife? How's the new car? Something to let them know, like, especially for a senior guy to the younger guys, I know about you and I want to know about you. Tell me more, and I think I've seen it more. It's getting better, at least where especially news people, they're not taught like, hey, hang out after your shift, right? Like with the new incoming crew that's coming in to relieve you, hang out a little bit because you don't get to work with them, right? So it goes like you want to know the whole department. So when you're coming off shift and your relief comes in, cool, you give them the transition, but hang out a little bit, have another cup of coffee, and just talk with the incoming crew. Ask them how their day's off. What are they doing? Hey, what are you guys doing for training day? Whatever it might be. But just don't run out the door because your shift's over. Like hang out for an additional, like, because I'm usually there for another 45 minutes. I just get caught up in conversation. I try to engage, especially the newer kids, to let them know, like, hey, hang out for a little bit, talk with me. I want to know about you. Like I don't get to work with you because you're relieving me. So let's talk. And I think that helps a lot to let people know we all care for one another. And I'm going to ask these open questions so we can all get to know each other.
I will argue that the fire chief, regardless of the size of your department, I get it if it's like LA Fire or even FDNY or something like that. It's probably a little bit difficult, but if you're a medium sized department, you should be making an effort to go out and get to know your crews. You brought up a good point about we want the newer members of the department to hang out and get to know other people that they may not be working with. The chief should be doing the exact same thing. You should get to know who your people are. I don't expect you to know, like, yeah, Cody, he's got 700 kids and 35 dogs. Like, I don't expect you to know
Probably
that.
busy.
Yeah.
Like a rabbit.
But you should at least know their
I need a
name. You
raise
should
at
at
that
least,
point.
yeah, right. I'll talk to your chief. I know him very well. But you should at least make an effort to get to know the people that are under your leadership.
Absolutely. Again, it just goes down to caring and actually giving a shit. And again, there's a lot of stuff on the Chiefs' plate. And again, it's not just chiefs; it's the chiefs underneath them, and again the lieutenants and the captains and lieutenants and so on and so forth. All just need to make an effort to show that we actually care for each other and that we're there for each other. And if someone's feeling down, we're going to help out, talk to you, or it's important to have each other's back. And that's what at the beginning of the conversation is. It's very difficult to speak up when you don't have support from your brothers and sisters when things are wrong and you're being mistreated, and you're going to speak up and you turn behind you and there's nobody there. That's a lonely feeling, and it's a struggle when you feel alone, when you feel excluded, villainized, you're labeled as disgruntled. Again, I know from experience, and it's very, very difficult. And if you have a culture where, Mike's being mistreated, we've seen it, we've heard it, we're not going to tolerate this. As brothers and sisters, we have your back. But in my experience, that wasn't the case. And it wasn't because they hated me, is because they were afraid, because they didn't want to lose their jobs, or they didn't want to be the target of that person. And I became a 45-year-old probie. I left my department finally, and I moved on to a new department, and it was for the better. But I was 45 years old when I did that. And that was a scary feeling, like moving on to a different department with a whole bunch of new people, just a completely different area. but it was for the better. And I love every single one of my people that I work with. The administrative staff is fantastic, and the crews I work with are fantastic. And it took me 3 times to apply to that department I'm with now because I got afraid of leaving, because he told me, my former chief told me, you're not going to make it. If you leave here, there's no coming back, and the grass isn't always greener, all that bullshit. And I finally just said, you know what, I can't, like we talked about, like I was going home all the time complaining to my wife. He did this, he did that, he said this, he said that. I just unloaded on her all the time. I was tired, angry, headaches, again, low T levels. I talk about that, with the stress that is induced from poor leadership. When you deal with it for a long time, it affects you physically. You start to lose sleep, you get nightmares. Again, your testosterone levels, for the dudes out there, your libido drops. You start to gain weight. You start to lose the joy that you had in life for the important things, like even working out. Like I didn't enjoy it. I just did it. It was like just doing it, but it wasn't fun. I wasn't having fun at the job anymore. And when I got onto my new place, it was like going through detox. It still takes a while. I'm still like, there's days like I feel it, but my first like 6 months, I actually had nightmares like that. My former chief and the assistant chief came to my work to try to get me fired. I like woke up out of a sound sleep when I was at work, thinking that they came to my place of employment to get me fired. It was fucking freaky. But I remember that dream clear as like it happened yesterday. So it does happen, but it does get better. So if anybody listening or watching, if you are contemplating about leaving, and you're afraid, I'm telling you, you can do it, because you don't want your whole career to be a shoulda, coulda, woulda, and stay at a place that doesn't appreciate you, or you're getting completely stressed where your health is now being affected and your family life is starting to go down the shitters.
Well, I think very valid points, Mike. That was awesome. I think we're going to wrap up this conversation here. Cody, you got any last remarks that you want to share?
No, good conversation. I've been taking notes this whole time.
Same. I got a
No,
couple new books to read.
Yeah,
no,
dude, pick
I
that up.
think you.
The Corley Moore Book of Search. Please check that out. Really good material in there. He's also, Corley Moore is going to be a presenter at FDIC. He didn't write this book, just so everyone knows. Like, this is like filled with people that he respects and knows very well that have helped to write this book. It's just like chock full of different authors. Like, you got Brian Brush in here. The first pages open up is Brian Brush talking in here about decision making on the fireground. You got Sean Duffy talking about search. You've got Rob Ramirez talking about everything. I love Rob Ramirez. So he's in here talking about it. You've got Rob Fisher. It's just, and especially for firefighters who are really into the job and want to learn more about the craft. Justin McWilliams. I don't know if you guys know who he is. That dude loves search. He has his Facebook page and social media page, talks about search all the time. So yeah, little plug again. I don't make any money off of this. I just absolutely love this book. So check that out. And the 30 Fires You Must Know. I got to see him at FDIC. Badass presentation. I love the way they gave it. So as actually for our place of employment, that's lieutenant material. So if our officers want to promote, they have to read that book, which I think is awesome, right? Like you should be doing that. That's the stuff you need to maintain and absorb. So 30 Fires You Must Know, Billy Goldfetter, and Frank Lee.
Awesome. Mike, where can people find you?
Man, I'm all over the place. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, The Can Report, or Stickers, The Firefighter. And that is my nickname, Stickers. I got that a while ago. And then my podcast. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple.
Sweet. All right, guys. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week with somebody else. Thanks again, Mike.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.